This is Rumana Ali. I hope you all are fine. In the last session, I have explained you about the different organs that are present in our alimentary canal, or we can say digestive tract. So, in the alimentary canal, one cavity is present, and the name of that cavity is buccal cavity. And we have also seen that this buccal cavity shows some parts like teeth, tongue, and palate. In the last session, we have already learned about the teeth, different types of teeth, classification of teeth based on its shape and based on the number of sets. And we have also learned about the structure called palate. Now in today's class, I am going to explain you about the structure of tooth. So when we look at the structure of tooth, it is divided into three parts. It shows three parts. And that parts are upper portion is called as crown, and this one middle portion is called as neck of the tooth, and this lower portion is called as the root of the tooth. So basically the tooth is divided into three main parts. They are crown, neck and root. Now let us see what are the different things that we can find in these three parts of the tooth. So firstly, the part which is visible, the white color part of the tooth which is visible to us, that hard part is called as enamel, and it is found in the crown region of a tooth. So this is called as the enamel, and enamel is the hardest part of our body. And this enamel is made up of calcium salts and even fluorides. But if this fluoride, range of fluoride becomes excess, there are so many problems that can be arises, and that can damages the structure of enamel. So this enamel is the hardest part of our body, and it is found in the crown region of our tooth. Now, below this enamel, we can find the presence of a layer throughout the tooth. So this layer is present throughout the tooth, and we call this layer as dentine. So dentine is the layer which covers the whole tooth, which covers the crown, neck and the root region of the tooth. And below this, the root is also a part of a tooth which is covered by a layer called dentine. So dentine of the root shows the presence of a substance, and that substance is called as cementum. So here you can find the presence of a layer called cementum in the root region of our tooth. This is a substance which allows the tooth to get fixed up in the socket of our jawbone. So this is called as cementum, and over the cementum a layer of membrane is present, and that layer is called as periodontal membrane. This is the region of our jawbone, and in our jawbone some space is present. This is the socket in which the tooth gets fixed, socket or pocket like structure which is present in our jawbone, and this socket helps the tooth to get fixed up. And in the jawbone you can see some space, and this space is called as alveolus. So the space is present in the jawbone which is called as alveolus, and a socket like structure is present in which the tooth get fixed. Now you can see the third part, and this is called as pulp cavity. It is a cavity which is present in our tooth, and this cavity is called as pulp cavity. Pulp cavity is filled up with the pulp. Pulp means the nerves, blood vessels which are present, that is called as pulp, and this pulp is present in the pulp cavity of our tooth. So in the pulp cavity you can find the presence of nerve cells as well as the blood vessels are present. So now again I am going to explain you. I will give you a quick recap of the structure of tooth. So here the tooth is divided into three main parts: crown, neck and root. In the part crown, you can see the presence of the hardest white color substance, that is enamel, and the next layer is present, that is called as dentine, which is covering the whole tooth. Then below the dentine a cavity is present which is called as pulp cavity. This pulp cavity is filled up with the nerve cells and also the blood vessels are present. Now the root region of the tooth is also covered by a layer called dentine, but the dentine of the root shows the presence of a special material that is called as cementum. This material is present which helps the tooth to get attached in the socket of a jawbone, and this cementum is covered by a membrane. The name of that membrane is periodontal membrane. The space is present in our jawbone and that space is called as alveolus. So this is about the structure of our tooth. And here in this part of our tooth, some cells are present, and these cells are called as odontoblasts. So these cells are called as odontoblasts. So our next organ that is present in the buccal cavity again is our tongue. Tongue is a freely movable muscular sense organ that is attached to the floor of oral cavity by a fold of tissue, and this fold of filamentous. This filamentous fold of tissue is called as frenulum. So this freely movable sense organ is attached to the floor of our buccal cavity, which is also called as oral cavity, by a fold of tissue that is called as frenulum. So when you see the structure of our tongue, then it shows the presence of some small projections on its surface. These small projections that are present on the surface of our tongue, these are named as papillae, and these projections are again classified into three main types. They are circumvallate papillae, fungiform papillae, and the last one is filiform papillae. So when you see the surface of the tongue, then small projections are present which are called as papillae, and it is of three types: circumvallate, fungiform and filiform. Circumvallate papillae are the largest papillae that are present on the surface of our tongue, and these are present in an inverted V like this. So these are arranged in an inverted V shaped. These are called as circumvallate papillae, and at the edges of the tongue you can see the presence of fungiform papillae, and in the middle region of our tongue filiform papillae are present. These different papillae bear different taste buds, but filiform papillae are smallest and they do not have any taste buds. No taste buds in the filiform papillae. The taste buds which are present in the region of circumvallate papillae, they detect the bitter taste of the food, and the taste buds which are present in the other region of our tongue, they detect the sour, salty and sweet taste of the different food products. So in this way, the taste buds are helping in identifying the taste of the food because of the presence of small projections, and that small projections are called as papillae, which are found on the surface of our tongue. And the tongue is an organ which is called as universal toothbrush, and we call the tongue as universal toothbrush by looking at its function. Because of its functions, we name the tongue as universal toothbrush. So let us see what are the different functions of the organ tongue. Tongue is an organ which helps us to detect the taste. So it helps in taste detection. It is an organ which mixes the food with the saliva. The food mixes up with the saliva, and the tongue also helps in speaking. Without tongue we cannot speak. And this is an organ that helps to swallow the food. So these are the different functions of our sense organ called tongue, and based on these functions we can call the tongue as universal toothbrush. So this is about an organ, tongue, which is found in our buccal cavity. So we have seen that in the alimentary canal, the anterior opening is our mouth. This mouth opens into the buccal cavity, and buccal cavity has palate, teeth and tongue. We have already discussed about all these structures that are found in the buccal cavity. Now this oral cavity opens into a small region called pharynx. So the pharynx is a region in which the oral cavity opens. This pharynx shows the presence of three parts. They are nasopharynx, oropharynx, laryngopharynx. So eustachian tube, which is present in the middle ear cavity, it opens into the nasopharynx. So you might have observed that when you put an eardrop, sometimes it reaches into your throat. It is because of the opening of the eustachian tube into the nasopharynx. This nasopharynx leads into a region called oropharynx, and oropharynx into the laryngopharynx. Laryngopharynx is a region where you see that trachea opens. So trachea is also called as windpipe, and this windpipe opens into laryngopharynx through a structure called glottis. And one more structure is present, that is called as epiglottis, and it is a cartilaginous flap-like structure. When you see the pharynx, it extends, and then the two tubes were arises, two tube pipe-like structures were arising from the end part of the pharynx. One tube or one pipe is an esophagus, that is called as food pipe, and the other pipe is trachea, which is called as windpipe. So the esophagus and trachea, both of them are separated by a structure called epiglottis. So epiglottis is a flap-like structure that prevents common passage of food and air, whereas pharynx is a structure which acts as a common passage for both food and air. Food and air, both of them can pass commonly through a structure called pharynx, but here esophagus specifically is for the passage of food, and trachea is particularly for the passage of air. The epiglottis is a structure that prevents the entry of food into the trachea, and it also prevents the entry of air into the food pipe. This is how the epiglottis separating the two pipes that are esophagus and trachea and prevent the mixing of food and air. Now some voluntary muscles and lymphoid tissues are also present in a region called pharynx. The lymphoid tissues which are present in the pharynx, we call them as tonsils, and tonsils are of three types: pharyngeal tonsils, palatine tonsils and lingual tonsils. These three tonsils are the lymphoid tissues of the pharynx, and they help in the process of swallowing of food. We can swallow the food easily because of the presence of lymphoid tissues called tonsils. This pharynx opens into a pipe, that is esophagus. Just before I told you that it opens into a pipe-like structure which is called as esophagus. Esophagus is a long tube which passes through neck, thorax region, and also through the diaphragm, and then finally it leads into the stomach. It is a long pipe which allows the passage of food. The food can pass easily through a long pipe called esophagus, and this esophagus shows some contraction and relaxation of the muscles. There are so many muscles which are present in the walls of the esophagus. The contraction and relaxation of that muscles allows the food to get into the stomach. So the movement of bolus is the food which is getting digested. So movement of bolus can be achieved by the contraction and relaxation of the muscles that are found in the walls of the esophagus, and at the end of the esophagus you can find the presence of some sphincter muscles. These sphincter muscles, if it contracts, then it opens, enters into the stomach. So the contraction and relaxation of the sphincter muscle allows the food to move from esophagus into the stomach. So this is how the esophagus is designed for the movement of bolus into the stomach. So if you look at the structure of esophagus, then you can see contraction and relaxation of the muscles like this. This is how the muscles get contracted, and this way they get relaxed. At the beginning portion of the esophagus, one more muscle is present that allows the esophagus to open, and that muscle is called as esophageal sphincter. And at the end, at the posterior region of the esophagus, some sphincter muscles are also present at the posterior region, and that sphincter muscles are called as cardiac sphincter muscles. And the contraction and the relaxation of these cardiac sphincter muscles allows the opening and closing of esophagus into the stomach. So esophagus is a food pipe which opens into a J-shaped muscular bag-like structure, and this J-shaped muscular bag-like structure is our stomach. The stomach is located in the left part of our abdominal cavity, just below the diaphragm. So it is located below the diaphragm in the left part of our abdominal cavity. When you see the structure of the stomach, then it is showing three regions. The first region is cardiac region, the second one is fundic portion, and the third portion is pyloric portion. Cardiac portion is the portion in which the esophagus open, and here also we can find the presence of some sphincter muscles that allows the opening of esophagus in the cardiac region of the stomach. The middle part of our stomach shows the presence of a region that is called as fundic region, and this fundic region opens into this posterior region of the stomach that is called as pyloric region. And this pyloric region has one aperture that is called as pyloric aperture, and this is guarded by some muscles called pyloric sphincter muscles, allows the opening and closing of this pyloric aperture. The pyloric aperture opens into the first part of the small intestine. So again, the contraction and the relaxation of the muscles which are present in our stomach allows the food to enter into the small intestine, and this stomach opens into the third portion of the stomach is pyloric portion, and this portion opens into the small intestine. And small intestine is an organ which is present in our alimentary canal or digestive tract, and it is the longest or the largest portion of our digestive tract. This small intestine is also again classified into three main parts. They are called as duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. Duodenum is the anterior part of our small intestine, jejunum is the middle part, and ileum is the posterior part. Duodenum is a part of the small intestine that receives hepatopancreatic juices. So hepatopancreatic duct opens into the anterior part of our small intestine that is called as duodenum. This duodenum opens into the jejunum, and this jejunum opens into the posterior portion that is called as ileum. In the ileum, you can see the presence of sphincter muscles again, and these sphincter muscles prevents the backflow of fecal matter that is present in the ileum. So this is how the different parts are present in the different organs of our digestive tract, and these different parts helps in carrying out the process of digestion. The small intestine opens into the large intestine. Large intestine is also a part of our digestive tract, and this large intestine shows three regions. First one is cecum, second one is colon, and the third one is rectum. Cecum is a region where you can see the presence of a vestigial organ, that is appendix, and cecum is a part of our large intestine that is divided into again 4 parts. They are ascending region, transverse region, descending region and sigmoid region. These 4 are the different regions of cecum. Then cecum opens into the other part of our large intestine, that is colon. In the colon, pouches like structures are present that are called as haustra, and these structures also help in the process of digestion. This colon opens into the last part of the large intestine, that is rectum, and this rectum leads into the anal canal. This anal canal opens out through the anus. The opening of the rectum into the anal canal is regulated by some sphincter muscles, and they are internal sphincter muscles and external anal sphincter muscles. So this is how the different parts are present in the large intestine, and these different parts helps in the process of digestion, and the fecal matter that forms in the large intestine can move out through our anus. So these different parts like mouth, buccal cavity, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine and large intestine, these are the different parts that forms the alimentary canal or the digestive tract in the human body.